There's increasing concern that the UK is entering a period of stagflation. Stagflation is where an economy has a recession and inflation. Normally, in a recession, low growth and falling demand for goods results in falling prices. There's often an inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment. This is called the Phillips curve in economics. However, sometimes an economy can have both high inflation and low growth with high unemployment. There are indications that this is what we're starting to have. Looking at real gross domestic product, this is total output or income of the UK, the size of the UK economy after inflation, we can see that the economy is flatlining. We see the impact of COVID. And after some recovery, the economy has seen no growth. In July of this year, the economy is still slightly below the levels of the second half of 2019. It still hasn't quite recovered to pre-COVID levels. Initial data for August is suggesting that the economy is continuing to contract. This is based on the PMI, the Purchasing Managers Index. It's not hard data, but it's a useful survey of business people as to what's actually going on at the coalface. In the past, it's proven to be a reliable barometer for what will happen to the economy. There was some positive news on inflation. Survey respondents suggested that prices were changing slightly in response to weaker demand and falling input cost inflation. This isn't really surprising. We can see that the rate of inflation has been coming down. The Consumer Price Index has been coming down but remains at 6.8% in July. That is, prices are still increasing by almost 7%. There's not really any good news here. The most optimistic scenario is that as growth slows, prices will fall significantly. Once inflation is under control, the hope would be that business can then plan on the basis of controllable costs and the economy can slowly recover. Let's just work that through for a minute. Demand contracts as a result of high interest rates. Companies have to reduce output and employment. Falling demand causes downward prices, and eventually lower prices stimulate demand and the economy slowly recovers. But slow is the word here, so that inflation isn't stoked up again. Now let's be clear about this. This is a very optimistic scenario, and it will take time, at least 1 to 2 years. And it all relies on prices falling, at least so that the Bank of England 2% target is achieved. The most recent data looks like we're starting to get the falling output and increasing unemployment. We need inflation to dramatically fall in order that we don't have stagflation. The truth is that we are in the early stages of stagflation. It actually exists now. So we need radical price reductions for the necessary corrections to start. I'm not so optimistic that we're going to get that. 2 reasons for this. First, core inflation remains stubbornly high. This shows what happens to prices outside of the energy and food price shocks. I think that one of the big reasons for this is that companies have been restoring profits through price increases. It's not necessarily greedflation as such, but it is taking every opportunity to increase prices where possible. Inflation has been low for so long that there hasn't been an opportunity like this for a long time, so companies are making the most of it. Second, I did a recent video on worrying inflation prospects. I make the point that times are really uncertain, and it's just as likely that inflation will go up as go down. There are credible risks of new inflation shocks through things like more food shortages, climate change issues, and even the possibility of another pandemic. If this is the case, we will get more inflation, and we will be in a serious case of stagflation. The 2% inflation target looks far from where we are at the moment. We have a long way to go. In conclusion, I think that current policies are completely wrong. Politicians seem unable to think outside of the neoliberal box. I've been reading recently the book Austerity, The History of a Dangerous Idea by Mark Blythe. Blythe is really thorough in going through all of the evidence to show that austerity does not work. Yet this is exactly what the UK government is doing. Even under the optimistic scenario, pain is ahead. If we get stagflation, even more pain will follow. There is an alternative. I think we need to stimulate the economy through a rebuilding plan. I did a couple of videos recently on increasing tax to cover the costs of this. Of course, we need to be careful not to provoke inflation too much. That's why I think that a renewal plan needs to focus on things that will have a quick impact on productivity. Growth with improved productivity will help to moderate inflation. The chances for my proposal are 0. We have no politicians saying anything like this, so it looks like we're going to have the pain. I hope you found this information useful. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching. See you next time.